Welcome home, Marcus. We knew you'd be back. After all, it was programmed in you. Oh, and you executed that programming beautifully.
We've been fighting a long time, and we have all lost so very much, so many loved ones gone. We are outnumbered by machines. Humans have a strength that cannot be measured. You are not alone. There are pockets of resistance all around the planet. This is John Connor. If you're listening to this, you are the resistance. John Connor. T-800.
A new Terminator. Like you said it would be.
Let's get one thing straight. I don't believe in prophecy. Not when one can rewrite the future in a heartbeat.
What did we find down there? We found a solution, Connor, that can end this war once and for all.
What day is it? What year?
2018.
What happened here?
Judgment Day happened.
We know the machines use shortwave transmitters to communicate.
Hey!
Our intel has located a hidden signal under the primary channel. It allows for direct control of the machines.
Connor, we do this right. The war is over. We mount our offensive in 4 days.
Why 4 days? The kill list was intercepted from Skynet. It says everyone in this room will be dead by week's end. You're number 2 on the list.
Well, who's number 1?
An unknown, a civilian. Kyle Reese.
Skynet has Kyle Reese.
And that is just fate.
Command is about to bomb my father and the rest of those prisoners, and I cannot stop them.
I have to save him. He is the key. The key to the future, to the past. Without him, we lose everything.
No, you stay the course!
If we stay the course, we are dead! We are all dead!
On the 14th of May 2009, Terminator Salvation was premiered in the USA. During the course of June, it hit other parts of the world. It was directed by McG, who was best known for the Charlie's Angels movies and dozens of music videos. He was given a very large budget of $200 million to work with, but unfortunately the film was met with mixed reviews. Arnold Schwarzenegger was open about his thoughts on the movie and said it sucked. James Cameron was less harsh and said, "I think McG did a good job in this sense. I think he was almost too referential to the mythos of the first and second film. It didn't feel to me to be enough of a reinvention. I think the thing we did with the second film is that we reinvented the first film completely, spun it on its head and made the Terminator the good guy, and came up with a whole new concept for a villain. It felt fresh. I didn't feel the fourth movie was fresh enough." At the box office, Salvation managed to recoup $370 million worldwide. Now that is pretty good money, but considering its huge budget and marketing costs, it was deemed a bit of a failure, despite a further $54 million from DVD and Blu-ray sales. Before the film's release, it was given a huge marketing push. This was of course the first Terminator film to not have Arnold Schwarzenegger in the lead role, but thankfully it had Christian Bale, hot off the success of The Dark Knight, and Sam Worthington, who was tipped to be a huge star after being cast in James Cameron's Avatar. The trailers for the film, however, made a massive blunder, giving away a big spoiler, revealing the true nature of Sam Worthington's character Marcus, pointing out that he was a cyborg. The most recent movie, Terminator Genesis, also made a similar blunder, revealing John Connor, who returns to the past, was a new prototype Terminator. With Terminator Salvation receiving a 12 rating in the UK and a PG-13 in the USA, toy manufacturers jumped at the chance to promote toys based on the movie, very much like T2. A new range of action figures and playsets were released, and they even recycled the Cyberskin generator toy from the early 90s. If you want to know more about this playset, you can find a review by Stuart Ashens. It's an interesting toy, but it is only a novelty that you'll get bored of very quickly. There was also a comic tie-in with a short run of 4 issues that was set before the events of Salvation. After the release of Terminator 3, there was discussions of a 4th movie around 2005. T3 had made money, and despite the lukewarm reception it received, the producers wanted to continue with the series with or without Arnold Schwarzenegger. Not long after T3, Arnold became the governor of California and semi-retired from acting to focus on his political duties. The original writers of T3 and the director Jonathan Mostow had wanted to set the movie directly after T3. Producers at C2 Pictures, Andrew Vania and Mario Casar, contracted Nick Stahl and Claire Danes to return as John Connor and Kate Brewster in another film, but as development moved forward, the film would be set further into the future, and Nick and Claire would ultimately be recast. Come 2007, it was announced that the rights to the Terminator franchise had passed from C2 Pictures, who were having financial problems, to the newly formed Halcyon Company, which was set up in 2006. It didn't last long as a company and filed for bankruptcy in 2009, not long after the release of Terminator Salvation. The heads of Halcyon, Victor Kubek and Derek Anderson, hoped to start a new trilogy based on the Terminator. Terminator 3 writers John Brancato and Michael Ferris wrote the first completed screenplay, and they received the full credit on the film. Their script evolved up to the making of the film and was worked on during production by other writers. Paul Haggis and Sean Ryan contributed rewrites, and once Christian Bale was attached, he got Jonathan Nolan involved to tweak the script. McG was a surprise choice and was recommended to the producers. They met with him and discovered he was a big fan of Terminator 1 and 2, and once he explained what he wanted to do with the film, and after reading the script, they liked his vision. McG wanted a retro-looking future, where the humans weren't using new technology, and many of Skynet's robots showed signs of rust, and that they had been used in battle for years. He felt the idea that the events in Terminator 2 and Terminator 3 had altered the future, which allowed him to be flexible with the presentation of the future and to show that Skynet was still evolving. The film's original title was Terminator Salvation: The Future Begins, but this was dropped during filming as they felt the title was too long. Shooting of the film started on May 5th, 2008 in New Mexico and made use of the Kirtland Air Force Base. Like Terminator 3, Warner Brothers signed on to distribute the movie in the United States, and Sony Pictures handled all the international territories. Throughout the shoot and writing process, the cast and crew would watch scenes from the 3 films to pick moments to reference or tribute, including Come With Me If You Want to Live and I'll Be Back, which is uttered by John in the film. The opening credits take on a similar style to the first movie, and the opening scene has John crushing a Terminator with a helicopter, which was storyboarded to homage the climax of the '84 movie. The film, however, was plagued with legal problems, on-site drama and script leaks. The producers of the film were battling each other over percentage earnings and breaches of contract, and Christian Bale was also recorded on set losing his temper with the lighting director, Shane Hurlbut. Shane apparently walked on set during a scene and Christian went bonkers. He started swearing and threatening him. It became news all over the world. Christian apologised and all was forgiven. Christian was obviously very embarrassed, but also felt a bit let down by the sound recording guys who leaked the audio. He even stays in character when he loses his temper, but you can subtly hear his British accent creeping through.
Fuck's sake, man, you're amateur. Da-da-da-da.
The script for the film, including the ending, was leaked online, which got Warner Brothers furious, and they had to hastily do reshoots and change the third act so that people would go in without any spoilers. The original ending was to have John die, and his image was kept alive by the Resistance by crafting his skin onto Marcus's cybernetic body. They felt the name of John Connor and his importance was more important than the actual person. Now, the early drafts had Marcus take John's place and continue with the war, but as the script was changed during the shooting process, they had Marcus kill Kate, Barnes, Carl and Starr, all of which being part of Skynet's master plan. This was a very dark ending and had the machines win. To be honest, if it ended that way, it would have pissed off a lot of people, and I'm glad it was leaked, so they had to change it. For the cast of Terminator Salvation, we have Christian Bale as John Connor. Apparently McG had originally wanted Bale to play Marcus, but Bale had other ideas and wanted to portray John Connor. In the early scripts, Connor had a smaller role, and once Bale had signed on, a decision was made to expand his role. Sam Worthington plays Marcus Wright, a new human Terminator hybrid, and the only one of his kind. Worthington was recommended to McG by James Cameron, who had at the time just finished working with Sam on Avatar. The late Anton Yelchin plays Carl Reese, a teenage refugee and admirer of John Connor and the Resistance. Yelchin said he wanted to portray Carl as Michael Biehn had, and not make him appear weaker because he was a younger version of the character. Yelchin tried to convey Carl's intensity by focusing on how fast Michael appeared when running in the original film. Moon Bloodgood plays Blair Williams, a pilot of the Resistance who encounters Marcus when he comes to her aid after an escape from Skynet. She doesn't believe he is a Terminator and feels he's very much human, and she begins to fall for Marcus. Bryce Dallas Howard plays Kate Connor, John's wife, and appears heavily pregnant. When Claire Danes originally portrayed her in Terminator 3, Kate was a veterinarian, but now she is a physician. Common plays Barnes, John's right-hand man. Barnes was originally written to be just a tough guy that would back up Connor when he was in trouble. However, McG wanted to push a more emotional side to the character, so you don't actually see Barnes in much combat, and he is seen as more supportive on an emotional level. Michael Ironside plays General Ashdown, the leader of the Resistance. He doesn't believe in John Connor's predictions and doesn't like John's rebellious ways. Any movie that has Michael Ironside in it gets extra brownie points from me. Helena Bonham Carter plays Dr. Serena Kogan. She convinces Marcus to donate his body for her research. She apparently accepted the part because her partner at the time, Tim Burton, was a fan of the series. Jada Grace Berry plays Star, an 8-year-old girl in Carl's care. Born after Judgment Day, Star is mute due to the trauma of the post-apocalyptic world. Could Star be the girl who gets killed in the first Terminator as Carl takes on the hunter-killer tank? To be honest, I don't know why she's in the film. She doesn't really have much to do. I suppose it's to show the early signs that Carl is protecting someone who isn't capable of looking after themselves against the machines. And finally we have Linda Hamilton, who returns as Sarah Connor, John's mother, but only in the form of pre-recorded tapes to help John with his battle against the machines. The film opens in 2003, the same year Skynet attacks and destroys the majority of the population on Earth. Not long before the attack, Dr. Serena Kogan of Cyberdyne Systems convinces Marcus, who is on death row, to sign over his body for medical research following his execution. It's left ambiguous as to the nature of his true crime, but blames himself for the death of his brother and 2 police officers. He feels he doesn't deserve the second chance that the doctor has offered. Jumping forward to 2018, John Connor leads an attack on a Skynet base, where he discovers human prisoners and schematics for a new type of Terminator, the T-800. This confirms John's predictions. Connor escapes just before Skynet strikes the base and takes out his men. Following Connor's departure and battle with a damaged T-600, Marcus Wright emerges from the base's wreckage and begins walking towards LA. Connor needs to find out what they discovered in the Skynet base and demands an audience with the Resistance leaders located in a nuclear submarine. The Resistance has discovered a hidden signal that they believe can initiate a permanent shutdown of Skynet's machines. Working on this intel, the General and his men plan to launch an attack against the Skynet base in San Francisco. This attack will commence in 4 days, due to an intercepted kill list created by Skynet, which plans to terminate the Resistance's command staff. Connor learns he is second on the list, along with a civilian called Carl Reese. The Resistance leaders don't believe in Reese's importance, and despite having faith in Connor as a soldier, they don't believe he is the prophet his followers claim him to be. Marcus arrives at the ruins of LA. He walks into the city and calls out to a figure standing there alone, but he doesn't realise that it's a Terminator who quickly begins to shoot in his direction. Reese comes to the rescue and pushes him out of the way of the gunfire. Reese takes out the Terminator in a quick fashion. Marcus, after learning about Judgment Day, joins Reese and his little friend, Star, as they make their way to the Resistance base, after hearing John Connor on the radio. As they make their way across the wasteland, Reese and Star are taken prisoner by Skynet and its new 60-foot tall harvester robots after a frenzied chase. Marcus attempts to save them, but he falls into the river below. The Resistance come to the rescue but are too late. One of their airplanes is taken out during the attack, but the pilot, Williams, luckily escapes in time. Marcus comes to help Williams and joins her as they make their way back to Connor's base. As they approach the entrance, it's littered with magnetic landmines. One jumps up and attaches itself to Marcus's leg and explodes. As John's wife attempts to save his life, The Resistance fighters discover that Marcus is a new type of Terminator, a cyborg with a mechanical endoskeleton and a partially artificial cerebral cortex. Although Wright believes himself to be human, as he still retains his memories, Connor thinks that Wright has been sent to execute him and orders his team to execute Marcus. Williams, believing Marcus not to be a Terminator but a good person, comes to his aid. During their escape, Wright saves Connor's life from Skynet's new snake-like hydrobots, and the two strike a deal. Marcus wants to find out who turned him into this machine and agrees to enter Skynet's headquarters in San Francisco, and in the process help Connor rescue the other prisoners, including his father, Carl Reese. Industrial Light and Magic, who had also served on Terminator 2 and 3, handled the large majority of the visual effects, with some assistance from Asylum Visual Effects and Rising Sun Pictures. Salvation was one of the last films that Stan Winston, the visual effects supervisor on the first 3 films, worked on. He died on the 15th of June 2008, and McG dedicated the film to him in the end credits. The film isn't that old, but CGI is improving all the time, and new techniques and artists are bringing more ideas to the table to further push the believability of computer animation. Terminator Salvation is one of those movies that still looks fantastic to this day, and I think will age well over the coming years. Now, this is thanks to the large majority of visual effects being done in camera and augmented with CGI. The movie introduces a few new Terminators, such as the giant humanoid harvesters that are capturing the remaining humans. The harvesters ride on aerostats, which are smaller versions of the classic hunter-killers. We have Moto Terminators that also help in capturing humans. Ducati designers were hired to create the robots, and the on-screen robot was a combination of stuntmen driving actual Ducatis with a Moto Terminator mock-up, as well as a digital counterpart. But one thing that bothered me was that why would Skynet design these bikes that could be operated and ridden by a human? It makes no sense. They were clearly thrown in because someone on the production was a fan of motorbikes. We have the new Hydrobots, which were modelled on eels. They were executed with a full-scale animatronic that was made out of rubber and made to look metallic, which interacted with the actors and was animated in CGI for when it needed more movement. The film features the early T-600 and T-700 Terminators with rubber skin. McG interpreted Carl Reese's description in the original film of the T-600 as being easy to spot by making them tall and bulky. For the scenes of humans fighting with Terminators, the actors interacted with stuntmen wearing motion capture suits, later replaced by digital robots. As Schwarzenegger had decided not to appear in the film, they decided to use a bodybuilder to stand in and use CGI to capture the look of Arnold's face, using a mould from 1984, scanning it into the computer and mapping it over the double. Originally they weren't going to have a close-up of the face, but McG wanted to push the effects, so we got to see the T-800 in detail. Even to this day, it's really difficult to capture the likeness of real people, and you fall into that uncanny valley. Sadly, this is probably the weakest effect for me. It's very tough to capture someone's likeness and make it look real, and when I first saw it back in 2009, it didn't look right. It's something about the eyes and the skin looks too rubbery. The best stuff for me was the miniatures handled by Kerner Studios. They are a joy to watch, seeing the buildings crumble as the hunter-killer passes by, and seeing Skynet being blown to pieces at the end. It's an epic shot and the standout piece for me. I was surprised looking back at the Oscars that it wasn't even nominated for a visual effects award. But even if it did, it would have lost to Avatar. Danny Elfman composes the score to Terminator Salvation. The musical sound is a lot different to what you come to expect from Danny Elfman. Often when you hear his music, it's often a very distinctive sound, and if you missed the opening credits, you would probably think someone else composed the score. McG had originally wanted Hans Zimmer, but he was unable to schedule a meeting with him. McG even approached Brad Fiedel, who created the amazing themes for Terminator 1 and 2. But Brad wasn't interested in returning to the franchise and has still remained uninterested in going back to the Hollywood system, so Danny Elfman was approached and happily took on the job. The music has orchestral pieces mixed with an industrial sound, and as is a must when it comes to the Terminator, the use of synthesizers. They only use a small part of the original Terminator theme for the end of the opening credits, when the T-800 turns up, and the start of the end credits. It's great that the theme is there, but it does seem a little shoehorned in because it has to be there as an obligation. It would have been nice to draw upon more of the themes that Brad created in order to help further keep in line with James Cameron's original films. What we do get is thankfully pretty good. The new theme that opens the movie, which I believe is the theme from Marcus, is a great addition. There are two versions of this theme, the big heroic march, and a slower version that is performed with an acoustic guitar. This theme is easily my favourite of the soundtrack. The score on the whole is very effective and is far better than the highly forgettable score to Terminator 3, but many of the tracks aren't particularly memorable. For example, you could put on a track from Terminator 2 and instantly know where it fits in the film, whereas in Salvation it all blends together and doesn't really stand out, apart from the great theme from Marcus. Reprise Records released a soundtrack on May 19th, 2009, which included 15 tracks. The soundtrack does not include the entire score, however. Certain cues, such as when the T-800 attacks John Connor, are absent, as is the short Terminator main theme. The famous Guns N' Roses song You Could Be Mine, which John plays in T2, does make a return when John attempts to hijack one of the Moto Terminators, but it wasn't included on the soundtrack. However, the album included the song Rooster by Alice in Chains. The soundtrack can be purchased via iTunes, and you can easily obtain the CD release on a second-hand market for a low price. During a time when games based on movies was still the norm on video game consoles, Terminator Salvation made its way onto quite a few gaming platforms. It turned up on the 360, PS3, PC, mobile devices, and even an arcade game was produced. The console received a third-person shooter game that was in a similar vein to Gears of War, where you play as John Connor battling the Terminators. It was set before the events in Salvation, hence why Marcus doesn't make an appearance, and instead Blair and Barnes take on a larger role. It arrived just in time for the movie's release in the USA. The game was given very average reviews, with most complaining that it took approximately 4 hours to complete, and that Christian Bale did not provide his voice to the game. Christian is a big fan of video games, and only a couple of years before provided his voice for the Batman Begins game. Terminator Salvation, the game, became a popular title to rent in order to collect all the trophies and achievements on the PS3 and 360, due to it being so easy to collect them all. It's certainly not a terrible game, and you can probably pick it up for peanuts on a second-hand market, but it follows the usual trend that movies based on games never meet expectations and often just seem rushed to cash in on the movie. For the iPhone, gamers got a watered down version of the console port, and there was also a 2D based style game for the less powered mobile devices. The arcade version seemed to show up any place that still had arcades. It was a light gun shooter that has players assume the role of John Connor. The game consists of 2 selectable missions. The objective of the first mission is to seek out and destroy the secret lab, where Skynet conducts experiments on humans. The other objective is to escort refugees to a safe house and to finally destroy Skynet. I never actually got a chance to play it, but apparently it got pretty good reviews, and many enjoyed it more than the film. When Terminator Salvation came out, I was quite excited to see it. The early reviews were generally positive. Empire magazine gave it 4 out of 5, and despite being annoyed by the trailers, which gave away big spoilers, I went into it feeling optimistic and positive. It looked better than Terminator 3, and we were finally in the future battling Skynet. Once I saw it and came out of the cinema, I just felt very numb. The film didn't do anything for me, and I wasn't moved by it or excited by what I saw, for the most part. The visual effects were fantastic and the set pieces were executed to a very high standard, but the screenplay just didn't bring across the drama that it wanted to convey. If you take out some of the scenes from the film and watch them separately, they work really well. For example, John's speech to the General about how he needs to save Kyle works great in a trailer, but when you watch it in the context of the scene and see how it's supposed to play out, it doesn't work nearly as well. That's one of the issues with the movie. It has sections of really good moments strung together with forgettable and pondering scenes. It fails to fire on all cylinders. The movie has a brilliant opening act, setting up the character of Marcus and John Connor discovering the new plans of the T-800. The sequence is directed with such flair and energy. There are long takes with explosive action, and the large budget is clearly visible on screen. It instantly informs the viewer what position John Connor is at the opening of the story. He is not yet in full command, but is a hardened warrior. He's a totally different character to what we saw in T3, and is far more in line with how Connor was depicted in the opening act of T2. The future of Cameron's films were only shown to us in short flashback segments, and to be honest we saw more of the war in T2 3D, so in all not that much. This makes great attempts to expand the landscape and show us the aftermath of Judgment Day, with the remaining survivors and how they avoid capture. The movie is definitely going in the right direction. We spent so long leading up to this war and now we are finally here, but it's not quite what I expected. The photography in the movie exhibits an interesting style, but sadly it doesn't really capture the look of the apocalyptic future Cameron had shown in T1 and 2. Once the movie jumps to 2018, it portrays a very grey and colourless future, making it not very interesting to look at. It's all been adjusted in post, and it's unclear what it actually looked like when it was filmed. The early teaser trailer gives you more of an impression. Of course all movies are graded and adjusted before release, but the vast majority of the film appears to have had all the colour zapped from it, very much like Death Race from the year before. Other films also took on a similar look, such as The Road and A Book of Eli. Once you get near Skynet, it throws in some of the familiar colours of the series, such as the blues and reds. The blues are more of that teal look that filmmakers are so obsessed with, and doesn't have the cold blues that Cameron loved using. Once more colours are used, it appears more grungy and greasy, which is an interesting approach, but one that I don't think naturally fits with the rest of the Terminator series. It's a clear push to make everything more realistic and believable, and less of the fantasy sci-fi that was part of Cameron's vision. Also, what I found baffling is that large chunks of the film take place during the day. Carl Reese made it clear in the first movie that they hide below ground during the day and moved around and attacked during the night, a simple rule the writers failed to follow. Now the biggest beef I have with the film is Skynet's master plan. It's so monumentally stupid, and it baffles the mind as to why they thought this was a smart move. Skynet's plan was to use Marcus to infiltrate Connor's base and draw him and Carl back to Skynet in order to have them both killed. First off, Skynet has many opportunities to kill Connor, but doesn't. Due to contrivances of the plot, they can strike his base whenever they like, but they are hardly on the offensive in the film. Skynet even puts Carl in prison and doesn't do anything with him. Skynet could easily kill him off and win the war. Boom, done. John Connor gets into Skynet with little resistance. Skynet could just swarm the base with dozens of Terminators, but doesn't, because the filmmakers just want to see him face up against a T-800. It's like playing a video game on easy. Now I don't have a problem with Connor facing up against a classic Terminator, and Marcus coming to help him. It's a fun action sequence and nicely homages the battles of the past, but it's how the story ties up to this battle that is rubbish. Skynet is supposed to be calculating and thinks logically, but what comes across is that it's sloppy and thinking like someone writing fan fiction, just including moments to please viewers. With the constant script changes, this may have led to the messy narrative and its third act issues, as they scrambled to change things due to the script leak. As for the movie's action scenes, they are executed to the highest level. The stunt team and second unit team have to be commended for their great efforts. The push for more in-camera stunts, explosions, and just a general action are some of the highlights of the film. Conrad Buff, the editor of many James Cameron's movies, including T2, returns to edit the film, and we get long takes with a great flow to the sequences. Some action scenes are a bit long-winded, such as Marcus's escape from Connor's base, but 90% of it is brilliant. I think McG does get a lot of flack because of some of his previous directing credits, but when you watch the film it is very much apparent throughout that he has a good visual eye that conveys his vision well. How he sets up the shots and moves the camera does show signs of a good director. It feels and looks like an epic summer blockbuster, unlike T3, which felt like an expensive TV movie. Many discredit McG because of some of his previous directing efforts, such as the Charlie's Angels movies. They made money, but I think most people consider them popcorn junk. During the mid-2000s, McG was attached to a number of big franchises. He was at one point going to direct the new Superman film, which caused a bit of doubt over what the quality of the film would be like. Once he was announced as the director of the fourth Terminator, fans probably thought this was the end of the franchise and that it was a big mistake, and that he did not possess the right credentials to take on the Terminator series. I suppose we can only base that concern on his previous work, but once he began explaining his vision and the concept art started to appear online, people started warming to the idea. The cast all do a pretty good job, with most of the characters outside of Connor, Marcus and Reese don't get much to do or much screen time sadly, but Christian Bale takes the character very seriously and gets into the emotional moments with high amounts of energy. This was just after The Dark Knight, and he does seem to be channeling a similar tone with his voice to his performance as Batman, and there doesn't seem to be a soft side to him. He is a full-on military guy who barks a lot and is very angry all the time, making him not very likeable, despite his MO being to save humanity. I suppose he has become as paranoid as his mother, like she was in T2. I just think he needed to dial his performance back a little so it wasn't so over the top. There are little moments with his wife Kate that bring out his softer side, but in his conversation with others, it's a bit too intense. I've never been a fan of Sam Worthington. I don't think he is a bad actor, and in the movie does a serviceable job with the character of Marcus. He is lost, a man out of time, and doesn't know who he is or his role in this new apocalyptic world, but he doesn't bring anything to the table to make his performance stand out or be memorable. It's just an unremarkable performance. With the script changes and how the film ended, his role in the movie feels redundant at the end, because he serves as only a guy to jump in and save John Connor. The movie builds his character and his importance up, but ultimately just to be part of a stupid plan by Skynet. Marcus is not really a good infiltrator. He luckily bumps into Carl Reese, although shortly afterwards doesn't want to tag along with him, and he decides to come to the aid of Blair, who knows how to get to John Connor. However, this was never deliberate on the part of Marcus. You could argue this was all part of Skynet's plan, and that it was somehow driving him in the right direction subconsciously. But I don't buy that, or the way Skynet smugly takes credit by the end. It's all so clumsy. Having Skynet appear in a visible form to talk to Marcus is something that it would never do. I can't imagine James Cameron doing that if he made a sequel himself. Skynet would never communicate with others because it's made its mind up. As Carl said in the original film, the Terminator can't be reasoned or bargained with. Skynet would be the same as the Terminator and even less responsive. It has no desire to talk to anyone. For me, the standout performance was really Anton Yelchin. It's incredibly sad how he lost his life at such a young age and had a very bright career in front of him. His performance as Carl Reese really captures the essence of Michael Biehn's portrayal from the 1984 movie. He's lean, wiry and fast, and not stupidly buff as he is in Terminator Genisys. Anton does have a slight passing resemblance to Michael Biehn, although he is not the spitting image of him, but you believe he is Kyle because of the way he moves and portrays an already hardened soldier who is desperate to show support for the Resistance, John Connor and his mission. Salvation is certainly the best of the sequels after T2, and despite me not being overly keen on the film when it came out, I've certainly warmed to it over the years. It's taken me a few tries to give it its fair shake, and to conclude that it's not that bad. It has its many merits to it despite its dubious ideas and plot twists. The filmmakers had a challenge, a Terminator film without Arnold in the lead. Were people turned off because he wasn't in it? Who knows? It certainly didn't do well at the box office. The film does do something original for once, in that it's not another chase movie. The first three all had the same theme running through them, so it was finally breaking the mould, and you have to give it credit for that. I would have preferred to have seen a direct sequel to this movie rather than the soft reboot we got with Terminator Genisys, which was quite frankly an insult to the series, and a movie I never intend to watch again. The second in this new trilogy could have seen Skynet evolve into what we are familiar with, and I wanted to see John Connor attack that giant pyramid we saw in the T2 3D ride. Terminator Salvation does leave it open for a sequel, with a quick line of dialogue saying the war isn't over, but you get the sense that it seemed kind of final in the movie, and the idea of the sequel felt shoehorned in. The movie implies that this will be the end of Skynet, and what we got wasn't as epic as it should have been. If you wrote off Terminator Salvation after one viewing, then I think you should give it another go like I did. It took me a few tries to show some appreciation for it. I think many of us discarded it after seeing it at the cinema. It has some talented people involved, and it's a well-made movie that sadly doesn't quite deliver on expectations with a clumsy third act. With many other movies that have these issues, we can often push aside their problems, accept the movie for what it is and still give it a recommendation. Salvation should be given that opportunity. Not a perfect film by any means, and it doesn't satisfy all my desires of what I wanted to see with the war with Skynet, but the building blocks are there and it's going in the right direction. It's not recycling the same plot as the first three, and it's trying to break free from that narrative, yet it falters along the way, but it is still entertaining. It takes itself seriously and doesn't poke fun at the source material or the mythos of the Terminator series.
My name is Marcus Wright.
You think you're human?
I am human.
Where were you manufactured?
I was born August 22nd, 1975.
You were sent here to kill me. Kill the leadership.
I don't know what you're talking about.
You and me. We've been at war. Since before either of us even existed. You tried killing my mother, Sarah Connor. You killed my father, Kyle Reese. You will not kill me.
Kyle Reese is on a transporter heading for Skynet.
Okay, what's gonna happen to him? Disassembled. You mean killed?
It may have information on Skynet.
I know he's not the enemy.
That machine saved you only to gain access to kill all of us.
I thought I knew our enemy. That thing, that makes me feel like I know nothing. I looked in its eyes, and it believes, absolutely believes, that it is human. It believes everything that it says, and it is telling me that Kyle Reese is in Skynet.
That gun ain't gonna stop shit! Nobody shot you in the heart and I see that thing beating a mile a minute! Kyle Reese! He's in Skynet. You do that, he's dead. I can get you in.
Hal, look at me. That's why I don't trust you.
I'm the only hope you have. I need to find who did this to me.
Welcome home, Marcus. We knew you'd be back. After all, it was programmed in you. In times of desperation, people will believe what they want to believe. And so, we gave them what they wanted to believe.
A trick in the form of a signal the Resistance thought would win the war.
And they were right. It will end this war. Except that it is the Resistance that will be terminated. Not Skynet.
I gotta end this! No, I'm not gonna leave you! You didn't! Come on!
If you enjoyed the video, you can find more on my YouTube channel, and also you can follow me on Twitter. If you want to help support the channel, you can donate through Patreon and receive monthly perks such as updates on the latest news on my channel, early access to reviews and commentaries before they go live on YouTube. Even the smallest donation can help keep this channel going. Thank you.